1997 was a turning point for horror. Practical effects battled early CGI, direct-to-video thrived before DVD took over, and studios chased mainstream success while the margins got weird. Scream sequels dominated theaters, but something else was happening in the shadows. Creature features with ambition, Stephen King going straight to video, Italian horror masters making late-career efforts, Full Moon churning out monster mayhem. These weren't the films that defined 1997, they were the ones rented on impulse or discovered by accident. Some had real talent behind the camera. Others were pure exploitation that knew exactly what they were. All of them caught horror in transition, when the old ways were still fighting to stay relevant. 10 overlooked horror films from 1997, the ones that slipped through the cracks. Mimic, 1997. A deadly disease spreads through New York City, carried by cockroaches and targeting children. To stop it, scientists engineer a new insect, the Judas breed, designed to infiltrate and wipe out the roach population. The plan works, and the insects are believed to be gone. 3 years later, something is killing people in the subway tunnels. The Judas breed didn't disappear. It adapted, grew to human size, and learned how to blend in with its prey. The film follows the consequences of that mistake. Mira Sorvino plays the scientist responsible for creating the insects, forced to confront what her work has become. Charles S. Dutton and Josh Brolin support the story as survivors navigating the city's forgotten spaces. Performances stay grounded, even as the situation escalates into full creature horror. The creatures are the film's strongest element. Their ability to fold their bodies into human silhouettes creates moments of genuine unease before they reveal their true form. Practical effects and animatronics give them physical presence, even when early CGI shows its age. The subway tunnels are used well, tight spaces, limited visibility, and no clear escape routes. Mimic is a flawed monster movie shaped by studio interference, but it still works on a basic level. It delivers atmosphere, solid creature design, and a clear sense of threat. Not the film it could have been, but an effective piece of late 90s urban horror. The Relic, 1997. A researcher returns from the Amazon with crates of artifacts bound for Chicago's Natural History Museum. Weeks later, as the museum prepares for a major gala, a series of brutal murders begins. Victims are found decapitated, their hypothalamus is removed. A detective and a biologist piece together the truth. Something arrived in those crates, and it's been growing stronger inside the museum. The film keeps its focus on investigation and escalation. Penelope Ann Miller and Tom Sizemore lead the search, approaching the situation like a procedural until it becomes clear they're dealing with something far worse. The supporting cast fills out the museum staff and city officials, many of them more focused on appearances than safety. Once the gala begins, logic gives way to survival. The creature is the main attraction. Designed by Stan Winston, the Kothoga blends animal traits into something that feels unfamiliar and aggressive. Practical suits and animatronics give it real weight, especially in tight spaces. The lighting stays low, revealing just enough to keep tension high. The museum itself works as a setting. Long corridors, dark exhibit halls, and locked doors turning the building into a trap. The Relic doesn't try to redefine the genre. It delivers a straightforward monster movie built on atmosphere, pacing, and solid effects work. Clean, efficient, and effective. Exactly the kind of late 90s creature feature it sets out to be. Wishmaster, 1997. An ancient artifact is accidentally opened, releasing a djinn, an entity that grants wishes by twisting their wording into something lethal. If he can fulfill 3 wishes for the person who freed him, he'll gain the power to open a gateway and bring his kind into the world. A gemologist becomes his primary target, and as she resists making wishes, the djinn carves a violent path through anyone foolish enough to test him. The film wastes little time getting to the point. Andrew Divoff dominates the screen as the djinn, delivering every line with theatrical menace and dark humor. He treats wish-granting as performance, toying with victims before turning their desires against them. Tammy Lauren plays the lead as resourceful, but largely reactive, functioning as the story's anchor while chaos unfolds around her. Familiar horror faces pop up throughout, in brief, playful appearances. The appeal is in the set pieces. Each wish leads to an elaborate death built around literal interpretation. Bodies contort, reality bends, and violence escalates quickly. K&B Effects Group leans heavily into practical splatter, excessive, messy, and unapologetic. The Jinn's true form appears briefly but memorably, relying on dense prosthetics rather than effects trickery. Wishmaster is built for spectacle. It prioritizes gore, pacing, and attitude over depth or mythology. Loud, campy, and firmly rooted in late 90s video store horror, it delivers exactly what it promises. Creative kills, practical effects, and a villain who clearly enjoys every second of it. The Night Flier, 1997. A tabloid reporter begins tracking a serial killer who moves between small regional airports in a private plane. Victims are found drained of blood, and the killer leaves behind grotesque crime scenes before disappearing without a trace. As the investigation deepens, it becomes clear this isn't a human predator. The man calling himself Dwight Renfield is a vampire, using forgotten airfields and night flights to hunt in isolation. The film stays focused on character rather than spectacle. Miguel Ferrer leads as the journalist, a cynical opportunist, chasing a career-saving story with little concern for the damage he causes. He's abrasive, unethical, and fully aware of it. Julie Entwistle appears as a rival reporter, offering a quieter counterpoint to his recklessness. The newsroom and airport workers feel lived in, adding to the film's rough texture. The horror builds gradually. The vampire is kept mostly out of sight, revealed through aftermath and implication, before finally emerging in full. Practical makeup gives the creature a feral, diseased look that avoids glamour entirely. The airport settings do much of the work. Bright, empty spaces that feel exposed and lonely, especially at night. The Night Flyer treats vampirism as something ugly and predatory. It doesn't romanticize its monster or redeem its protagonist. Lean, mean, and unpleasant by design, it's a grounded King adaptation that finds horror in obsession, isolation, and the kind of people willing to chase both. Campfire Tales, 1997. After a car accident leaves them stranded on a dark road, 4 teenagers pass the time by telling horror stories around a campfire. 3 familiar urban legends unfold. A couple on their honeymoon is stalked by a hook-handed killer. A group of teens investigates strange scratching sounds that shouldn't be coming from anywhere. A biker picks up a hitchhiker who turns out to be something else entirely. As each story ends, the framing situation grows increasingly uneasy, and the boundary between fiction and reality starts to blur. Each segment uses a different cast and tone, but all stick closely to the core of the legends, rather than reinventing them. There's no irony or commentary layered on top. Just clean setups and clear payoffs. Production values are stronger than expected for a late 90s direct-to-video release. The segments are visually distinct but cohesive, relying more on atmosphere than effects. Violence is limited and often implied, using darkness, sound, and timing to do most of the work. The emphasis stays on mood rather than shock. Campfire Tales works because it understands what makes these stories effective. It treats urban legends as simple warnings, meant to be told out loud, not analyzed. Modest, sincere, and efficient, it delivers exactly what its title promises. Familiar scares told around a fire, with one final turn at the end. Night of the Demons 3, 1997. On Halloween night, a group of young adults breaks into Hull House believing it to be abandoned. What they don't know is that Angela, the demonic force tied to the building, is still there, waiting for new victims. Once inside, escape becomes impossible, as Angela begins possessing them and turning the group against itself. Survival becomes a matter of lasting until sunrise. This third entry leans further into dark comedy than the earlier films. Amelia Kincaid returns as Angela, playing the role with exaggerated confidence and theatrical menace. She clearly understands what the character represents by this point. The younger cast fills out familiar archetypes, reacting more to the chaos than driving the story, which keeps the focus firmly on Angela's presence. The effects emphasize quantity over polish. Possessions are messy, bodies are altered, and violence escalates quickly. Most of the kills rely on makeup effects rather than elaborate staging, keeping things contained and practical. Hull House remains an effective setting, cramped, decaying, and shadow-heavy, doing much of the atmospheric work as characters are boxed in. Night of the Demons 3 is a straight-to-video sequel that sticks to formula. It doesn't expand the mythology or reinvent the series. Instead, it delivers what fans expect. Angela, Halloween chaos, and low-budget excess. It's thinner and rougher than the original, but it knows its audience and doesn't pretend to be anything else. Bleeders, 1997. A man and his wife travel to a remote island to investigate his rare blood disorder and a family history filled with unanswered questions. The locals are openly hostile, shutting down any attempt to learn about the island's past. When mutilated bodies begin turning up, the truth surfaces. His family didn't disappear generations ago. They survived underground, mutating through isolation and inbreeding, and now emerged to feed. Worse, the bloodline may not be finished yet. The film approaches its mystery slowly. Roy Dupuis and Kristen Lehman play the couple as determined but increasingly overwhelmed, pushing forward even as the situation becomes harder to rationalize. Rutger Hauer appears as the town doctor, adding a layer of credibility and restraint to material that often borders on exploitation. The performances do what they can to ground a story that steadily grows more extreme. The creature work relies on practical effects. Deformed family members are realized through heavy prosthetics and makeup, emphasizing physical corruption over movement or speed. Underground sequences are dim and claustrophobic, using darkness to mask budget limitations while maintaining atmosphere. Violence is infrequent but abrupt, focusing on shock rather than sustained action. Bleeders is an uneven Lovecraft adaptation that struggles with pacing and payoff. Its ideas are stronger than its execution, but the commitment to practical effects and isolated setting keeps it from collapsing entirely. Messy, grim, and limited, it's a curiosity best suited for completists and late-night creature feature fans. Vampire Journals, 1997. Zachary is a vampire who rejects the cruelty of his kind. Created centuries earlier by his master Ash, he refuses to embrace predation and instead spends his immortal life hunting the one who made him. Their pursuit eventually leads to Bucharest, where Ash has settled in and become obsessed with a concert pianist he plans to turn into his companion. Zachary arrives too late to stop the damage, but not too late to try to end it. The film centers on its conflicted leads. David Gunn plays Zachary as withdrawn and burdened by guilt, driven more by obligation than heroism. Jonathan Morris brings theatrical excess to Ash, treating immortality as indulgence rather than curse. Kirsten Chera completes the triangle as the pianist caught between them, functioning more as symbol than fully developed character. Performances are sincere, even when the dialogue strains toward melodrama. Production values are modest but purposeful. European locations and Romanian architecture provide Gothic texture without elaborate sets. The vampire mythology stays traditional, feeding, immortality, and corruption, presented straight without modern irony. Effects are restrained, minimal gore, simple makeup work, and stake deaths that rely on implication rather than spectacle. A classical score reinforces the film's romantic tone. Vampire Journals aims for tragic vampire drama on a tight budget. It doesn't always reach its emotional goals, but it commits to mood and sincerity. For viewers drawn to low-budget Gothic horror with melancholy leanings, it offers a quiet, if limited, experience. The Wax Mask, 1997. In early 20th century Italy, a young woman takes a job at a wax museum following the death of her parents. The exhibits are disturbingly lifelike, and before long, people in the surrounding area begin to disappear. As she looks deeper into the museum's operations, she uncovers the truth. its owner is paralyzing victims and encasing them in wax while they're still alive, preserving them as grotesque works of art. Her investigation places her directly in his sights. The film leans heavily into Gothic melodrama. Robert Hossein plays the museum's proprietor with theatrical intensity, while Romina Mondello grounds the story as the increasingly determined protagonist. Performances are deliberately heightened, fitting the film's operatic tone rather than aiming for realism. The effects are the main attraction. Bodies sealed in wax, prolonged death sequences, and elaborate killing devices reflect Italian horror's fixation on tactile cruelty. The Wax Museum works well as a setting. Narrow passages, shadowy rooms, and frozen figures creating constant unease. Production design commits to period detail even when budget limitations are visible. The final act introduces mechanical contraptions that push the film towards strange, almost steampunk excess. The Wax Mask is an ambitious but uneven late-era Italian horror film. Its strengths lie in practical effects and atmosphere rather than storytelling. Derivative and slow in places, it still offers moments of genuine craftsmanship for viewers drawn to stylized old-school European horror. Hideous, 1997. Rival collectors of medical oddities compete over rare and deformed specimens preserved in jars. When a particularly valuable find goes missing, both sides trace it back to a remote castle where the collections are stored. What they don't realize is that one of the specimens isn't dead. It's alive, growing, and fiercely protective of another creature kept nearby. As the collectors argue and posture, the creatures break free and turn the castle into a killing ground. The film plays everything at an exaggerated pitch. Michael Citroniti and Mel Johnson Jr. lead a cast of deliberately outsized characters, all leaning into grotesque humor rather than realism. Performances are broad and theatrical, clearly aimed at comedy rather than suspense. Everyone involved understands the tone and commits to it fully. The practical effects are the main draw. Creature designs rely on puppetry and suits, emphasizing warped anatomy and exaggerated movement. The results are more cartoonish than frightening, but consistently tangible. Gore is frequent but stylized, designed to provoke laughs rather than discomfort. The castle setting adds Gothic texture, though the lighting and staging keep things firmly in camp territory. Hideous isn't interested in subtlety or depth. It's low-budget horror comedy built around strange creatures and absurd situations. Messy, loud, and intentionally silly, it works best as a curiosity for full moon fans who appreciate practical effects and don't mind a movie that fully embraces its own ridiculousness. If you love discovering forgotten horror and cult cinema, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films time forgot. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.